This week on Work and Life, I chat to Mark Christie. Mark is the Director of Digital Initiatives for the Department of Education in the Northern Territory and has a fantastic outlook on life. I really enjoyed my chat with Mark, and if you do too, remember to hit the like and subscribe.
Welcome to Work and Life with Eggenham. Here I chat with people about their work, life away from work, and how they achieve, or if in fact they do achieve, what everyone so desperately wants, which is a work-life balance. Today I'm talking to Mark Christie. Mark is the Director of Digital Initiatives at the Department of Education in the Northern Territory. How are you going, Mark?
I'm great. How are you, David?
I'm good. 35 degrees and 80% humidity in Darwin.
It's not that bad actually. The humidity. I'm not sure what the humidity is, but I've ridden my bike home at lunchtime to make sure I could be here on time, and it was nice and warm. But it's certainly been warmer, as you know. Come Christmas time with the wet season, the humidity is terrible. But no, we're in our dry season at the moment, so not too bad.
Exactly. June, July is the best time to go up to Darwin.
Yes.
If anyone's wondering, the humidity is still a little bit there, but it is a dry season. So cool nights and 33 degrees during the day.
And an interesting fact this weekend is our famous Glentie, which is the Greek festival which takes over the Esplanade in Darwin. And Darwin's not big compared to Melbourne, and I've been to the Glentie in Melbourne, and I have to say that the Glentie in Darwin is actually bigger.
There's a huge Greek community in Darwin. People don't understand how big the Greek community in Darwin is.
Yes, and I heard just the other day 4 ton of octopus has been ordered and will arrive or has arrived in Darwin and will be consumed this weekend. And the smell of barbecuing octopus, sorry for all the vegetarian folk out there, will be wafting over the centre of Darwin. And it is one of the most wonderful smells you'll ever get. And of course, the story about the fact that the octopus are tenderized in concrete mixers is absolutely true.
well, octopus, and for those people who don't eat seafood, gyros.
Yes,
Gyros,
gyros.
lucky. Yeah, exactly.
Well, and if you don't eat meat, the beautiful sweets that are there. It's a calorie cheat day when the Glentie's on. It's pretty good.
The sweets are fantastic for diabetes, type 2 diabetes. You walk away with it. Okay, so the Christies in IT, 4 brothers, 3 have gone into IT and 3 have been very successful in IT. What is it with your family and IT?
I don't know, but the reality is it's actually all 4 of us.
Is it all 4 of you now?
It is 4, and the ironic thing about that is that 3 of us are in IT and we have IT degrees, and the one who is a teacher, he has a master's of IT. So there you go. So he does a lot of programming and he teaches gaming. So it's actually all 4 of us. And when you consider raised in Darwin, I remember grade 12 at Darwin High School, where a couple of blokes brought in something that resembled a PC. I'd probably called it a naked PC because I don't think it had a box around it. It was basically a very, very large computer board, and we were all just amazed by it. So that was the introduction to computers, but it wasn't until many years later that I ended up being involved in computers. But why? I don't know. Maybe it's that curiosity. Curiosity is one part of it. Problem solving, I don't know.
Yeah. It's competitive, trying to outdo each other.
Well, maybe, but the thing is, we went down different paths. I mean, Sean, I think Sean and Lance were really the ones who forged their way initially with the computing side of things and continued on with the computing skills, whereas Grant and I were more in the linguistic side of things with our language skills with Indonesian and Chinese, and then maybe because there is a connection between language and computer languages, we ended up converging into an area that there was obviously a demand, and whether it's project management, whether it's business analysis, whether it's teaching people about computers, computers are an everyday part of our lives. So a lot of opportunity.
You can't. People don't understand going to school in 1989. There weren't computers. Oh, sorry. There was. I think we had the computer lab in Darwin. At Darwin High was little Apple Macs, little Macs at the time. Or you're loading a computer with DOS.
Well, I can say that in 1978, when I went through grade 12 at Darwin High School, computer lab, what's that?
We had there was the, what were they, the I can't even think of what they were now. The back in, I think the Commodore 64.
Commodore 64s, the Ataris and things like that. But I mean, there is a story that I do tell about one of my first experiences with computers. So this was when I was in the military as a young lieutenant, and I walked into an area and I walked up to one of the apples that they had there, and the corporal there turned around and said to me, "Don't touch that, sir, you'll break it." and I thought, and I was a bit indignant about that, and I thought, right, I'll show him. So I went out and bought myself a PC, and it was an 8086. It was one of the first PCs, and it came with a floppy disk in it, which had the DOS operating system on it. I had no idea, and it was all. I think part of it was probably pirated. The book looked like it was pirated, and I took this computer home and put the disk in, and waited for a while, and Word, and came up with the A prompt. Yeah. I thought, it's got to do more than that. Seriously, I've just spent $1,500 on this computer. It's got to do more than that. And anyway, I typed something in, I hit enter, and it said something like bad command or prompt. And I thought, I've got more words on the screen. And so I decided then to read the book, and it said, to make your disk work, you've got to format it. So my one and only operating disk, I went format A. Boom, no more disk. So I tell people about that because over time, if you keep working with computers, I consider it to be like standing on a pile of wheat or sand or something, with more wheat coming off and pouring onto the top. If you're at the top of that pile, as more of the different knowledge and so forth pours onto that mountain, if you're at the top, it's easy just to stay on top. You're stepping one step at a time. Of course, if you're at the bottom of the mountain and you're trying to climb that sand pile or that wheat pile, it's a real challenge. Yeah. So when and because I've been doing it for a few years, I'm probably closer to the top than to the bottom. But I also want to extend an arm down to those folk who are starting out going, do you know what? This is the guy who formatted his one and only disk. That was my start to computing. So it doesn't matter what you do, because I think I've probably done worse than you to start off with. And it's all about saying, well, it doesn't matter what you do, because all it takes is a bit of resilience and persistence, and you achieve whatever you want to achieve.
Yeah, exactly. So you're the Director of Digital Initiatives at the Department of Education in the Northern Territory, which is a bloody long title. What do you actually do?
Well, I found that when you've got a long title, you get to confuse people with what you actually do.
So does that mean you do nothing?
Yeah, well, standard public servant. But I think I'm really lucky in my role because I get to go out and work in schools and try and get teachers using what we've got and you might go, well, that doesn't sound like an initiative. But what we find is that, for example, let's take PowerPoint. PowerPoint's been around for a million years. People don't actually they'll use something else because it's potentially better. But PowerPoint's been improving over many years, and you can do incredible things. You can make movies in PowerPoint. You can have quizzes in there. You can embed form quizzes in there and do slideshow presentations and what have you. So some of it's actually going out there and saying, this technology, actually, you've got a race car. You've got something incredible. Let me just show you a couple of things. And one of the other things I hasten to point out is that I'm not a teacher. I'm a trainer.
Yeah.
And that way I'm not threatening their pedagogical or teaching ability. I'm actually saying, see this thing, here are the 5 really cool things that I think are cool that might help in the classroom. But at the end of the day, you're the teacher, and you will work out, you'll put your hand in there and pick out the things that may or may not work for you. In doing that, luckily teachers turn around and go, hey, here's this cool thing I found. And if it is a cool thing, and many of them are, I'll put that into my kit bag and I will continue to share that with others. And when you're working with people in a one-on-one situation, what happens is you can then pick out the good things and go, do you know what? We have 152 schools in the Northern Territory. Why don't we take that and make that provide a general guideline, because it's such gold that all teachers should benefit from it. So the initiatives, that's my title, but the initiatives actually come from the teachers and the students themselves by being in a classroom. And yes, I've got the tech background to actually say, well, if I match that bit of technology with the process that they're trying to achieve their lessons with, maybe we can glue that into something that's digestible for the teacher, because not all of them are black belts with technology, and we can't expect them to be.
Well, not everyone wants to sit down and play with computers, and a lot of people don't have interest in it.
No,
you know?
no, that's right. And I fully appreciate that, and I think one of the reasons why I've kept the interest going personally is that I allow it to influence everything from my hobbies, or I use it for my hobbies, my personal storytelling or video capture that I do, through to the work side of things. So there is a definite blur, and it's not, when you talk about work-life balance, that whole business about doing what you love. Well, if I love editing a video that I've taken of me flying over Bear Sand Island or up through Bynoe Harbour, that's something I enjoy. I look at that and go, I want to share that visual beauty with someone else. Yeah. Along the way, I'm using some pretty good video editing techniques, which mean that maybe a teacher might go, gee, we'll use that for a music video, or that technique for a music video with our kids.
Your brother Lance, he sort of insisted I interview you or talk to you because you are a fantastic storyteller. You've been in the Defence Force, both the Army and Air Force, I understand. You've worked in Melbourne, Singapore, Darwin. You're in IT now. The floor is yours. Go to town. Tell everyone your story, or what you want to tell people of your story, because it is pretty amazing.
Well, and to think that it all started in Darwin, and when I finished year 12, and of course went through the cyclone, and that's, people talk about that as being a crucible event, and it was, the age of whatever it was, 13, to go through Cyclone Tracy, and then for the first 3 months after that, and I'd gone to Nightcliff High School, I put my age up and worked at Commonwealth Hostel. So we were back up at Nightcliff High School feeding the workers, and I was working from 4 a.m. until noon, or from noon until 8 p.m. Feeding people or washing dishes or doing all sorts of things. So the impact and influences from workers on me as a 13-year-old lad was really quite interesting. One of the stories, there's the workers were having a barbecue out at East Point at one of the old concrete gun turrets out there, and I had to go out to help, and we had, and I remember these numbers for some reason: 40 dozen pies and probably 40 crates of beer or something like that. So all these workers were out there, and we were in, and I remember it was a grey EH Holden station wagon. So it's a very old station wagon. And here we are driving out along the beach to get to this point. Of course, we got bogged. So then someone came along and pulled us out, and we're heading up the beach, and we get to this gun turret, and the beer had already been delivered earlier. So all these gents were around, and none of them had a beer in their hand, and I thought, oh, maybe they're waiting for the pies to come along. 13-year-old lad. And one of them came running over to us, and he said, "Did anyone bring a bottle opener?" Because this was before the days of the twist tops. And they because we were on a beach, there's nowhere to knock the beers, and they probably weren't trained in popping them with their teeth or doing whatever the tricks were to get these things off. And I just thought it was so funny that 40 dozen beers had turned up, and no one had thought to take a bottle opener to open them. So I had a lot of, just from an early age, having interesting stories like that happen, and then going through to finishing year 12, and then I immediately had a scholarship to go and live in Bali as a 17-year-old. Yeah. So spending 6 months there, living in Bali, well before there was a McDonald's and KFC, by the way. That's 1979, and then coming back to Australia, and my Indonesian was really quite good by that stage, because I'd done that through to year 12, and then living in north of in the northwestern tip of Bali, in a town called Negara, where I was the only Westerner along with a Dutch priest. So there were only two Westerners in this town called Negara. So when I came back to Australia, real life set in, and I thought, that's, what do I do now? So I ended up working for a brief period of time in the for Social Security, and not receiving checks, but actually handing them out and I was in the family allowance section, and I thought that was going to be my lot. I didn't know what to do, and I met a guy from the army, and he was in the SAS, and he'd got out, and he said, "Oh, you speak Indonesian? Why don't you go and become a linguist?" And I had no idea. So anyway, that's when I joined up, and I joined the Air Force and went through and became a linguist. And they said, "Oh, we've got too many Indonesian linguists. You'll have to learn Chinese." So I went off and learned Chinese at the RAF School of Languages, which was at Point Cook.
Yeah.
And I was impatient. And in the Air Force, you had to be 21 to become an officer. And I was 19, I think, or 20. So I joined the army, and I went down to Portsea, and regretted it immediately, because they're pretty serious down there. And I remember having to run up and down sand dunes like Percy Cerity, and all those things you see on movies where you're running with holding onto the telegraph poles, and you're the last group, so you have to go and do it again. That was us. So a lot of character building events occurred during that time, and then what was good, though, was the reason I joined them was I wanted to join the intelligence corps, and luckily I was accepted into that, and I worked in the military, and I worked in the civilian side for a number of years, but then I really wanted to follow the academic side of languages a bit, and that's what led me to go and study in China, and so I studied at Nanjing University, and also during that time I'd received another scholarship to go and this was with the Department of Foreign Affairs, to visit East Kalimantan, East Kalimantan, along with Java, and it was with 20 young Indonesians and 20 young Australians,
Oh,
and
okay.
and the 40 of us were in a village called Tanjung Iswi, which is hundreds of kilometers up the Mahakam River in the middle of Borneo or East Kalimantan. And it took us, I think, I can't remember, 3 days by boat. And it was the sort of boat that you would imagine you'd see on the Amazon River. It was just chug, 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 chug. I still remember the sound of this thing, and you only had a sarong to sleep. That covered you as you slept on the decks, and we ended up working in this village for 2 months, and it was an incredible experience. So then after that, I went and studied in China in Nanjing. Came back to Australia, and I went for a job, and someone said to me, the job interviewer said, "So you speak Indonesian fluently and Chinese fluently, but what can you really do?" Um, and that's when I realised that, hang on a minute, maybe I need to pivot here. And computers were the flavour of the month, and I had been using computers while I was also at university as well, and I really found that I loved the computer, so I then did a computer science degree on top of my arts degree, um, and then after that became a consultant with one of the big four consulting firms. But what I really wanted to do was to go and live and work extensively in Asia. That was my goal. I
Yep.
wanted to just live the life, be an expat, and I seemed to miss the opportunities. And I was working as a training manager for Colonial Mutual, actually, in Melbourne.
Yep.
But I was also working on computer-based training software. So a guy invited me up to Singapore to help do some training with one of the polytechnics up there, and it was literally fly up there for 2 weeks and teach people how to use this computer-based training package.
Yep.
So I did that, and while I was up there, I was lucky enough to be invited to lunch with the principal of the polytechnic and also the inventor of this particular computer-based training package from America. And it was like meeting. I was his biggest fan because I loved this program, and to think I was sitting at the same table as this guy, and um,
It's like meeting Bill Gates.
it was pretty close, pretty close. And anyway, the company ended up getting bought by Adobe, and I have a close affinity with Adobe, and I have had for many years. And but I was sitting next to the principal, and I turned around to him and started speaking to him in Chinese, and I said, "Oh, this is great. I'm loving the experience here." And he turned around to me and he said to me, "I'm sorry, Mark, I don't speak Chinese that well." And he'd been brought up in the British system, and he was one of the best guys, because what happened was he actually offered me a job, and I pinched myself on the plane going back. I was on cloud nine. Finally, this thing that I wanted to do, to live as an expat, was going to actually happen. So I got back to Australia, and ironically, we were in a bit of a downturn, and Colonial Mutual were about to retrench me. And before the person could get the words out of their mouth, and this is probably more fool me, I said I resign, and and I departed for almost 10 years in Singapore. Absolutely loved it. Just that whole experience of initially working for Niam Polytechnic, speaking Indonesian / Malay, very, very similar, and Mandarin, meant that cultural adaptation and blending in was pretty well instantaneous. I moved into the software selling and consulting side of things, which um, meant that we were selling software into 8 countries. So I was then visiting 8 countries in Asia and working with distributors in those countries and enjoying that experience as well.
Yeah.
But also not suffering, but experiencing the realities of, .com bursts and the financial crisis in Asia. Went through all of those things. So it wasn't always roses. There were challenges there, and certainly working in Singapore's hard. Even your playtime is spent with your phone ready to do business. So that's
What was that? That would have been what, mid-90s, not in the 90s?
Yeah. So it was through all of the 90s.
Yeah.
Up until 2000, pretty well. And then that's when the time had come to kind of say, well, that was a great chapter. And then I came back to Australia, and then that had involved also doing business development in Europe, traveling extensively through Europe, where I didn't have any language to support me, but it didn't really matter. So fortunately, everyone speaks English there. But everywhere from France to Finland to Germany to Russia, and there are so many stories there, and just one that in happier times with Russia, I was there near the Red Square, and the business, or the people I was working with, the guy had taken me out, and they do like having a drink, and in those days I liked having a drink as well. So we went out and we ate and we drank, and I thought, this is good, but I'd reached my limit and I just wanted to go back to the hotel, and it was probably midnight or something along those lines, and I could see my hotel, and we were walking back from the Red Square in Moscow, and I could see my hotel, and I thought, oh, thank heavens, I'm going to be able to get back there and survive this night out. And we would have been, I don't know, 100 meters away from the hotel, and it was now probably 1 o'clock in the morning, and my friend Andre turns around and he says, Marco, one more beer. And there was this little hole in the wall, and then we go, and there was beer, and this is, we'd started off the night with caviar, and it was
vodka and beer.
yeah, yes, chili vodka. These things that you could only see and experience in a movie. Here I was, participating and enjoying that. So there's, and I've been very lucky in that sense, and a lot of the places that I've travelled to, things have happened, and 99 times out of 100 they've been good things, and the bad ones have just become good stories at the end of the day. But that chapter kind of ended, and then I got married and we had a child. So that opened up a brand new chapter, and a couple of interesting and good things about that. There are many good things, but
whole world of responsibility.
Well, yes, but the whole world of adventure as well, because there's a few things when you have a child, and you're happy to have a child. There are two things that happen. They don't come with a maintenance manual. Yeah, there's no
a how-to book.
No, that's right. They come with a little book, a little yellow book for jabs. Turn up and you have this jab, and we weigh you, and we do this kind of thing. So it's kind of like, that one's more like a service manual. You just go in and you get your jabs and all of that sort of thing. But you've got a service manual, but you don't have an operation guide on how to what to do. And so we but anyway, we engaged with this, and luckily, the net result's been pretty good. But the other thing that happens too is when you have a child, you think, all right, you reach a certain point, they turn 18, and poof, they're off on their own, and what have you. No, it doesn't work like that. And what happens is, yes, they're independent, But do you stop worrying about them? No. So that's the thing. As soon as you have a child and you have that responsibility, the sense of worry, and it's not a bad worry, but that will always be with you as a parent.
Yeah.
You're always worrying, not about them, but maybe for them. So that was there are two points. Would that put me off having children? No, absolutely not.
Hmm.
But they're the two little surprises that sort of came along. But one thing that happened, so I thought, oh well, we're all settled down. So when Joe was born in Melbourne, 6 weeks after he was born, we put him in the car and drove to Darwin. We actually put him on the GAN, and it's like, oh my goodness, can't you stop? And then we got to Darwin. I was offered, and I didn't have a job. I was offered a job within 3 days as CEO of a small startup, and then I was offered a job to go and work in West Papua or Irian Jaya.
Okay.
Yeah, so we packed up the family and ended up living on the side of a mountain at 8,000 feet above sea level, working in a mine site. So our son spent his first couple of years living in amongst the Bantu people, and this incredible experience where the clouds, we lived above the clouds, and he could go out in the morning and actually just see the clouds down the side of the mountain. So that then prompted another thing for us, which was accidentally we found that each year for the first couple of years we were in a different place on his birthday, which coincidentally is actually on our wedding anniversary, same day.
Oh, okay.
So we then thought, well, we'll just make this a bit of an event and go somewhere different. Not necessarily a different country, but as it turned out, every single year up until the time he was, I think, 15 or 16 when he got into Melbourne High, we were in a different country or in a different place, whether it was Hong Kong or the Isle of the Dead in Tasmania, or wherever. And he actually picked the Isle of the Dead. And yes, we went there, and it was pretty cool. So we went to all of these different places. The Lake Taal volcano. We went into the volcano before it exploded, which it did a couple of years afterwards. So, and ironically, he's now in Taiwan. He just spent a year in Taiwan, and during that time, he has been to 7 different countries, traveling out from doing his stuff in Taiwan. So he is, at the grand old age of 22, a seasoned traveler, and very comfortable in basically going, okay, well, let's just pop down to the Philippines for the weekend because we can. And he does.
Lots of life experience, isn't it? And as you say, you've taught him how to do that and taught him that it's possible. Just go and do it.
Yeah. And it was all accidental. It's one of these things that people set up family traditions, and our and it became a tradition for us during that period. But the benefits, my goodness, the benefits of being able to travel as a family to a new place. We spent 2 months, and not a gap year, but a gap period of time between primary school and high school, 2 months in the United States.
Yeah.
We visited 25 states in 2 months. It was like the Great Race.
Bloody hell. You need a holiday from the holiday from that.
Exactly. So that, and Joe's mentioned that. He's actually said, when I go off on my holidays now, it's a doddle. It's a walk in the park, because the way we used to do it was either like we were chasing something down or something was chasing us down. We always seemed to be on the run.
Had to fill in as much as you can.
Yeah.
As much as you could in a limited amount of time that you had.
Yeah. But would I do it any different? Probably not. And now I won't say coming towards the end of my working career, but I'm closer to the end than to the start. we're now in a position to plan bigger, more adventurous trips.
Yeah.
And now that Joe is doing his own thing, if he can join us, fantastic. And if not, that's okay as well, because he's got his own adventures, and we can go off and have our adventures. So it's quite good. So our last one, as we were chatting about before we started, was the 4 months, 4 or 5. Well, it actually turned out to be almost 6 months, but the 3 months in South America, and then followed by a month in Europe, and then we did need a holiday, so we went to Chiang Mai in Thailand to basically hang out with the elephants, and learned how to make paper out of elephant poo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which is quite special. It's not a smelly experience. Let me tell you, it's actually it's very, very clean. You're only handling the cleanest of fibers, and you could probably eat off the paper.
Oh, okay.
We didn't try that. But,
I was going to say I'll leave that up to you. You can try that, not me. I'm not going to go there.
No. But it was a great experience, and a lovely way to end it. And so next year, based on the success of that, we're throwing ourselves out of our comfort zone again, and that's one of the things to do, is to get out of your comfort zone a bit. We're starting off with 2 months in Japan, and then we're flying to Europe, starting in Prague in the Czech Republic, and then making our way down through Croatia and Greece, and then across to Turkey, then to Jordan and Petra, Israel, and obviously there's conflict there at the moment. Yeah. But we were in Peru when the president got deposed. So we were actually in Machu Picchu when the president was deposed. So we got back to Lima, the capital, and there were big fences around the central square in front of the palace.
Yeah.
And the irony of that was that locals weren't allowed to go in there, but tourists could actually walk in there and take photographs. So we actually had the entire square to ourselves.
Wow.
So it's one of those weird things. But then we wanted to get out of Peru because the borders were starting to tighten a little bit, because they were closing airports and so forth. So we accidentally stumbled across the border into Ecuador without getting our passport stamped. We panicked a bit about this. It all sorted itself out in the end. But the smart traveller warning said, don't be hanging out on the border between Peru and Ecuador. So what do? We get into a tuk-tuk and illegally end up on the wrong side of the border in Ecuador, and have to backtrack to go and get everything stamped and so forth before we could go up to Guayaquil and then fly out to the Galapagos Islands, which is where we were going to.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was... And I can keep going.
Mate, as Lance said, you're a storyteller, so and specialising in Adobe really works for you. You can see how you enjoy it.
Yes. Yeah.
Did you use the Army and the Air Force, or probably more so the Army, but did you use that to get your education? Because obviously education's not cheap anymore. You've got HECS and all that sort of stuff.
No.
Did you use it, or did you use
no, I'm one of these people that all the generations after me hate, because I paid nothing for either of my 2 degrees.
Didn't you?
No,
was
education? Zero. Mine was free education through the University of Melbourne and Monash University.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So, and the military, I had the officer training course, that was a year, and the language course, which was a year. And they were, fantastic courses in their own right. So I received some great training, but not a formal degree-based course.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
you're obviously you love you do love technology, and you can see the way you speak about it,
Mm-hmm.
and it's more about what actually how it can help people. Um, is that why you're working in education now with technology?
Yeah, yeah, and it's funny how you gravitate to the things that work for you. So when I look back on my career and I go, well, I didn't set out to be a senior lecturer in a polytechnic in Singapore, but that's what I ended up doing. I didn't set out to be a computer-based training designer of online learning, but that's what I ended up doing. I didn't plan to be a training manager at Colonial Mutual for 1,500 staff, but that's what happened. And here I am in the Department of Education, and there's been a common thread of the e-learning or online learning uh, that's developed over, well, decades now. But education's been a pretty strong thing. And the other thing too is, yeah, I do like the sharing, because through the sharing you get the learning yourself as well.
Yeah,
Uh, if you treat it as a two way street, uh, and I, I don't know whether I could be a teacher in a classroom of students, and this is probably something, this is probably a semi-controversial statement in the sense that when it's behavior management, uh, I don't think that passion would be there. I love working with the willing people who have a thirst for learning as well. But if your role is to um, be in charge of behavior management for a group of children and sometimes adults,
yeah,
I'm not sure. That wouldn't really turn me on, and that's why I really love going out to, say, remote communities. You go in and schools around Darwin or wherever I can get to, because always, absolutely always, the kids and the teachers are engaged.
yeah. The the good, the bad, and the ugly. This is the last question about work, I suppose. The good, the bad, and the ugly. What do you like? What excites you about technology or computers going forward, and what sort of worries you? What makes you a little bit like, oh, I don't know if that's good. Is there anything?
Well, the good, and this is a personal thing, is that you know I can get up in the morning and be guaranteed there's going to be something new and curious and interesting to find out about. And out of whatever I see, 9 times out of 10, there'll be something where I'll be able to go, do you know, I think we could actually relate that to add value in the classroom,
Yeah,
uh, to either save time administratively for a teacher or to add value to learning outcomes for students. So, uh, and I don't go to bed thinking, oh, that's what I'm going to think about. I'm going to dream about that, and I'll do that. It just is a natural thing that, because I'm curious and interested in it, I see it and I go naturally, I could use that in this particular circumstance. So the flavour of the month at the moment, of course, is artificial intelligence. Now, there's good and bad about that, and I look for the good, uh, because if we lock things down, and I've seen comparisons when they were talking about changing from uh, telephones that you used to have to phone into the switchboard, and there was a person on the switchboard, normally a lady, who would pull the plug and they'd plug it in and make the call, and they might listen in if it's an interesting phone call.
yeah,
Uh, and it was actually a training video about the dial telephone coming, and there were all of these people that were really nervous about the dial telephone coming and what evils that may bring to people, and there were perceived problems. So I show that video sometimes, because whether it's how to use an ATM machine or all the things that we can think of in our lifetime, that no one's been harmed by it, although a few jobs have been lost along the way as technology um, uh, potentially takes over some things. And one thing I'll say about AI on that is that AI, artificial intelligence, won't take your job. However, someone who can use AI might.
oh, okay.
And
So
that,
you don't think it's that much of a threat? It's not going to be um, They don't actually think it'll actually lose people their jobs.
Oh, it will, but it won't be the AI. It'll be the person using the AI.
Yeah,
It's a bit like, well, any of those things where if you don't adapt to the skills, so if you can't adapt skills of, say, if you're working on a factory line and you don't adapt your skills to actually be able to control the machines, and if you're just not making that adaptation, then yes, you might lose your job, because
yeah.
the machines need maintenance, the machines need upgrades, they need all of those sorts of things. So you need to focus efforts um, where the technology and where the business is going. And what we've got to do in schools is prepare kids for those eventualities. Now, whether it's simply making them black belts in using Microsoft Office or the web in a safe way, or being creative. Now, that's really important. Creativity with technology is something that I'm really keen on teaching, because that's what people want in businesses. They want people to be different in a constructive way, to add value to the company and solve problems, or make business opportunities for the company.
And it's actually true in what you're saying, because people think, a lot of people will actually sit there and think of creativity as simply drawing a picture, or making some music, or just being artistic, I suppose. But creativity, as you say, there's creativity in being creative. Helps you solve problems. It helps you write business plans. It
Mm,
um, helps you look outside of the box. You're not sitting there going, the book says I've got to do this, and so I'll just go and do this to solve that problem.
mm,
You're not you're not actually being creative. You're actually sitting there thinking about how you're going to solve the problem, and how you can do it in maybe in a little bit of a different way, or something that's a little bit more beneficial, as you say,
mm,
to the business, or whatever you're trying to do.
mm. And that's why I think the AI and Copilot, ChatGPT, etc., can add value if you use them in the right way. In the same way that we went from learning things by rote, which was a standard thing. So collaboration in the old days we used to call cheating,
Yeah,
when you think about it. But now the whole idea is working in teams to collaborate to actually create a project and work on a project together. We foster that in the classroom, because when you go and work in real life, you're meant to work together with people. And
yeah,
the AI side of things, we don't have enough teachers support to support our kids. We've got a teacher shortage worldwide. Copilot or ChatGPT can act as an assistant teacher, and the key word there is assistant or co-pilot, not the teacher, not the pilot. That is the real person. So if you use that as a tool, then you're the person in charge, saying, okay, I can quickly apply this to 25 students. That allows me to focus on the students who really need some direct support from me, and I'll let the machine work on the other group, but I'll keep an eye on that as well. So
yeah.
treating it as a partnership is good, but it can get out of hand. People can get lazy. The machine can make mistakes, but the same can be said of anything. People not wearing a seatbelt in the car can lead to drastic consequences. So
Yeah.
we have to look for the good, but be cautious that there's always uh, we have a duty of care to our children and our staff. And this is not just education, but this is, I think, everyone, families, friends, everyone. We have a mutual duty of care.
Do you think technology, given everyone's got a phone in their hand, or
Mm.
whatever, do you think modern technology has actually taken or removed the lines between work and out of office times? Or do you think that's just up to the
Mm.
person?
Um, it has, and there are so many examples of management expectations where I've given you a work phone. That means it's got to be on 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
And that's something that it is the technology, but then you've got to have the people side of it in play, and that's where and that comes back to that the humanist side of things. So I love technology, but I also really highlight the fact that you need to be a humanist about your work relationships with other people, and understand. And sometimes I have to say that uh, by being a parent, and this is why it's a great thing, that changes your perspective a lot, because your values can change. Mine have never been to climb to the top. Mine have always been centered around the experience two ways. I'm
Yeah.
after the experience myself, yes, and that's my selfish bit. But I think that spins around and pushes something out to the people I work with, because hopefully they're getting the benefit of not just tech knowledge, but tech knowledge with a bit of life experience tacked onto it as well, I hope.
Yeah. So it's more about helping people and having people understand how beneficial it is
Yes.
to or what it actually brings to them, and how
Yeah.
it is
Well,
beneficial to them.
well,
But
from my Singapore experience, running an office up there, traditionally, uh, the you know the boss leaves the office first,
yeah,
and then the workers leave after that, um, and people just work incredible hours, really, really late. And I would make a point of saying, no, this is not fruitful. This is not fruitful. I need you to actually go home. You're paid during this time, and the work that you do during this time is appreciated, and you're paid for that work. Staying back for tradition, for whatever reason, no, that's not it. So that's got nothing to do with technology. It's got to do with kind of old-fashioned expectations
expectation
and
of
so forth. So it's really working on that to say, I value I value that you value your family more than my workplace,
yeah,
and
it's
I've always maintained that.
yeah.
So,
Um, we've all got to have hobbies outside of work. What does Mark do outside of work?
mm, I've had a few, but my favourite one is flying my little ultralight aeroplane, because I get to combine two things there. I get to strap a couple of cameras to it and fly over places where I might see manta rays or crocodiles or jabiru flying, and or even jabiru nests during the nesting season, um, and enjoy the flying experience, because you feel a little bit like Harry Potter in a way, because it is an ultralight. And yes, you have controlled airspace, and there's a whole lot of safety stuff that's involved, but you have greater freedom because you're not a passenger transport aircraft that has to take off from here at such and such a time and land here at such and such a time. Got to make sure you've got enough fuel, though. But apart from that, you can actually say, well, yeah, I'll fly out to Coimbra today because I haven't been out there for a while, or as I did the other weekend, fly out over Indian Island in Bynoe Harbour, because I knew with the dry season the waters are going to be bluer than blue. They're
Yeah,
just this time of the year they're fantastic. So that's a key hobby, and gardening is another one. And of late, I've become a little bit addicted to Zumba.
oh, oh Jesus, oh my
So
God.
so when I came back from South America and walking up and down mountains, and there are some really high mountains over there. Rainbow Mountain is over 5,000 meters above sea level. And
Were they giving you cocoa tea? Is it cocoa?
well,
Cocoa tea?
yeah,
Halfway up?
coca tea and coca leaves. I decided not to try any of it because luckily I didn't get altitude sickness.
Oh, okay.
Helen got altitude sickness. Um, but when you're traveling, for instance, across the Uyuni salt flats, and you're constantly at 4,500 meters, um, and this is in Bolivia, and then you go to La Paz, and there are these ladies, the Cholita wrestlers. So these are ladies dressed up in traditional Bolivian costumes, and they're these. They wear those, many layered dresses, with multiple layers on them, and they wear bowler hats, and they wrestle. They wrestle in the ring. We're talking, smackdown wrestling at 4,500 meters above sea level, where most people are just gasping for breath. So we, this,
That is bizarre.
it is. And it was one of my other brothers who put me onto it. He said, if you're going to La Paz, you've got to go and see the wrestling Cholitas. Well, I Googled it, and it was a thing. And but anyway, I'm getting off track. So with all of this walking up and down mountains, I lost 23 kilograms while I was over there, and I came back and I thought, I'll and it's been over 18 months now, and a friend of mine said, try Zumba, and it's just around the corner. And I thought, oh my goodness, I'm the most uncoordinated person, and I still am, by the way. But luckily, I've reached an age where I don't care. So I do look a bit like a headless chicken as I'm kind of flapping around, and I'm generally the only bloke there as well. And I think there's a pity factor that gets extended to me. But what's happened is it's turned into my tribe.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting thing. And so we're, in a couple of weekends, we're volunteering at Bunnings to raise funds for terminally ill kids as part of the Zumba group.
Bunnings barbecue sausage sizzle.
Sausage sizzle, yes, yeah, a whole. So, and I wouldn't have normally done that. So by going into these things, and yes, I love my flying, but it's a very individual activity. I think it's important to have an activity where there is some real community involved that isn't work, and whether it's not that I've been to a men's shed or what, it doesn't matter what it is. Having something like that, I think, is critical, because you meet different people, and they have their stories to share, and then from that you go, and you end up joining the dots and ending up in another destination, which is why I think we love our traveling, because and speaking of traveling, I think I only got as far as Petra, but anyway, we're going to go around to Lisbon via North Africa, including Cairo, and then after we've got, and that's Morocco and Gibraltar and so forth, and then after that we are going to need a holiday, so we're going to the Caribbean. And to top that off, and this is something I do want to add in, I've always wanted to see a sloth in real life.
Yeah.
And we wanted to see one in Ecuador or Colombia. Didn't even see one in a zoo. And there is a sloth in the Taiwan Zoo, and we were in Taiwan in November. Did we see that sloth? No. Couldn't see it. So in Costa Rica, they are in abundance, apparently. So as after this 8-month trip, I've set a quest that I'm going to see a sloth in Costa Rica, and
I was going to say, if at least it's not a case of blink and you'll miss it.
No, that's right.
They're not exactly the quickest animals.
No, they're not.
Like, if you see it, you'll be able to sit there and look at it for a bit.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to that. So, and there are other. I was lucky enough to be engaged with wild orangutans while I was living in East Kalimantan, and because they would come into the mining site where I was working, because all the area had been burnt, but our area was green because of the fire protection. So the orangutans would come in, and people would leave bananas for them and so forth. And they are an incredible animal, highly dangerous if you're in the wrong place, but very, very incredible. And the sloth, falls into that same thing, a bit like pandas as well. There.
Has the orangutan got paws or claws?
Yes. Yeah, no, well, not claws, but it's got hand. It's got the hand, but it's the strength of those hands where if they grabbed you, so I've seen orangutans tearing bark off trees. So they could probably skin you alive, I think, if they got a bit grumpy with you. But their strength, even though their arms don't look that strong, they are very strong. So they were always warned us never to get too close to them. But the ones that we saw were quite incredible. So one of the other things I do on the trips, which relates to education, and this is a kind of a hobby, is this notion of educational quests, where if you're going somewhere, so you may remember there was a game called Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego?
Yeah.
So that's a geography quiz. She's going around the world and looking for the jewels, and people are looking for her, and it's a geography quiz. Well, because we travel around the world, we do the same thing. So by setting up a quiz about the Galapagos Islands, or things in Venice, St. Mark's Square, or the catacombs in Paris, where all the skulls are under the ground, and all of that means that I need to research it either before or during the time that I go, and because it's a quiz with facts in it, you've got to try and get that right. And I love doing it. And it's a bit of a hobby. It's something that I do. So I'm a real life quester, traveling on these trips and learning more about the places that I'm visiting before I go. So the pyramids of Giza and surrounds and so forth, learning about the Thoth and Anubis, and all of the different gods and all of that sort of thing, hopefully arms you with at least enough quiz questions to appreciate the place more when you're there.
I was going to say, to give you a better understanding of it, wouldn't it? So it's not like you just hop on a plane and turn up and go around to all the tourist traps. You actually understand and sort of understand the place, and you know where you want to go, and not just go, okay, sightseeing.
Yep,
Can
and
delve a bit deeper into the place, can't you?
It definitely, and doing simple things like putting pins in maps. So you're basically getting a screenshot of your favorite map, whether it's Google or what have you, and just putting a few pins in those maps with destinations, and that's at a super high level, and then diving down a little bit deeper, only as far as you want to go.
Yeah.
If it becomes a chore, then you've gone too far. But doing it. Doing it really prepares you, because you can then ask a couple of questions when you arrive, and someone will always offer you something else. And I do get people to say, "Oh, where would you go in Croatia?" And it looks like we're now taking a sailing trip from Dubrovnik to Split, which
Croatia would be a fantastic place to go.
Yes,
the Adriatic Sea. It's got to be fantastic.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So all of those places, the Czech Republic, which I have been to before, and just going from Prague down through Brno, which is in the southern area, and then going to Vienna, where I've flown into before, but I haven't gone by road. And there's all those beautiful mountains and so forth. So you had this kind of mental expectation, and then of course when you come back, you've got you're enriched with not only the stories, but you tend to be a little bit pumped up as well.
So success, you obviously like a lot of travel, and you've got your ultralight and stuff. But success, how's it? How do you see it, and how's it changed over the years?
I think success for me really centers around family. I think that's the telling thing, and personal success, as in it's not what I've achieved at work per se. It's more about what I can actually give back. So the satisfaction I get is not, and I shouldn't say this, but it's not about pleasing my bosses, but it's about pleasing my customers. And hopefully by pleasing my customers, my bosses also get pleased, in that that's the whole Hakuna Matata
Yeah.
circle gets complete, because if I'm not in the NT news for the wrong reason, then it's got to be good for them. And I've been very lucky to people say, oh, I'd love to have a job like yours. Well, my job is the job that I've made it, and I've made it that job because I've focused on the customer, whether it's the
Yeah.
teacher or the student. And that's, my eyes are always on that group. How can I make life easier for a teacher, and how can I offer greater learning outcomes for a student via the teacher or independently, whatever that might be. So that I measure success based on those things, not where I am in any particular pecking order.
Mm.
And family wise, if the family's happy and we're doing what we want to do, and the term I have is living your best life. It's
Yeah.
not my term. It's obviously one that many people. And when I see my son living his best life, it's good on you. That's
Yeah. Well, exactly. And you've given him the skills to go and live his best life and live a good life. So,
mm,
and it also does come up to the individual too. So if they don't, they've got to, if they want to do it, they've got to go and do it, don't they? So
yes.
you can give people skills
Mm,
and teach them all they want, but if they don't want to do it, then they're not going to do it. So
mm,
it is one of those things where, yeah, you've got to you you've got to yeah, just go for, really do just have to go for it, I
yeah.
suppose. And
Well, one of the other things too, and it sounds like a throwaway line, but Joe, academically and life wise, he's really doing very well, and we're extremely proud of him. But the other little tiny thing is that I say, and he's also polite to his mum,
yeah,
and that is as important as any set of scores you might get or any achievements. It's really, if you can maintain that, and he has, So uh, that's also really important to me, and a kind of a measure of success.
oh, old fashioned manners.
Yeah.
People always remember someone who'll say please and thank you,
Yes. Yeah.
and not be rude.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
It's a funny thing because people go, oh, my ATAR was whatever, but no, it's the manners.
yeah.
It's the manners they remember, and that comes back to that comment I made about the humanist side of things. If you can do that, if you can be a humanist, and we found that in Taiwan actually, that was, people were very humanist focused over there, which was really
Yeah.
nice.
Hmm.
So
Does money buy happiness? I don't. I reckon. I reckon I know what you're going to say. But does money buy happiness?
well, it certainly helps. There's no question about that. The um, and the, there are probably a couple of things I want to say about that, and one of them is the because I come from that generation of old fashioned, work hard, save money, and do whatever. It also means that I've been pretty frugal, but having been frugal, I've travelled around the world and I've done some really incredible things. I've swum with sea lions in the Galapagos Islands. Uh, we're going to go and stand on the Great Wall of China for, well, third time for me in October.
Yeah.
All of these sorts of things. So you've got to have money to do that, but you've got to have, I guess, a little bit of money management to do that. Now,
Mm.
having said that, in one of my blogs, I wrote about sleeping in airports, and we slept in Ho Chi Minh Airport. We didn't. It was on our way back from Taiwan, and we just wanted to do it as an experiment,
Yeah.
because there is this thing about sleeping in airports. Now, it's not as comfortable as sleeping in a hotel, but we had an adventure.
Yeah. You got a
Uh,
story out of it.
yeah, and it was. It was a great story, and so. So does money buy happiness? Well, in that instance, no, not really. And we weren't. we could afford to do whatever we wanted to do, but we chose to do that. And one of the happiest moments I had, and actually when I go to San Francisco, I'm doing this. I am purposely staying in a 20-person dormitory next to Fisherman's Wharf in San Francisco. I don't have to. I can afford to stay in a hotel, but I'm going to meet more interesting people, and it's a proper traveling dormitory, and
Yeah.
I'll have my own place where I can lock my laptop up. But I'm right in Fort Mason, so I'm right in next to Lombard Street, and walk down to the Golden Gate Bridge and all of that stuff.
Right
But
in the middle of it.
yeah, but there'll be 20 people there from all over the world who'll have their own stories. And when you stay in a hotel, especially if the more expensive the hotel, the less you get to meet people. There's only the person who brings your bag up to the room, and all of that stuff, and the people on the front desk. And they're very
Yeah.
polite, and they know your name only because it's written down on your passport. But
And you're passing a credit card over to them.
yes, that's right. Yeah, yeah. So uh, you don't need money to find happiness,
No.
but it does help.
And because I think these three things work together. Freedom. What's freedom mean to you? Because some
Well,
people just automatically go, not working and everything like that. But what does it? It doesn't mean that to me. What's it mean to you?
well, to be honest, I haven't really needed to work for a few years now, but I like doing it. Why? Because I have the freedom at work to make a difference with the people I want to make a difference with.
Yeah.
So having so freedom is having, I guess, management who appreciate what you do, and they give you enough leeway, and you are responsible enough not to abuse or take advantage of that in the wrong way. So, um, freedom comes with responsibilities, and that's
Yeah.
probably a throwaway line, but I think that that's where I have been lucky because. Uh, I want to achieve things that provide a positive outcome, and therefore I have the freedom to do that. My flying, I don't want to fly an aeroplane from point A to point B. I want that freedom, but within the rules that keep me alive and make
Yeah.
sure I don't run into another plane. So again, you can have as much freedom as you want with in the envelope of responsibility that keeps others safe and you safe and happy as well. I think
Yeah.
that's probably a way of
Yeah.
defining it.
It is. It is good. I mean, I look at the three and I think of money buys you choice, it buys you peace of mind, and gives you the choice, and
Mm,
freedom is choice as well. So if 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 you're doing what you choose to do, not something you have to do,
mm,
then it all works together. And
yes,
success, as you say, is family and all that sort of stuff. So I think for me, the three work together, and it's more about putting yourself in a position to have choice rather than have to do something just because you have to do it because you've got to pay the rent or the mortgage or
mm.
whatever it may be. You know?
And curiosity plays a part in this as well. So I'm still I'm still curious and I'm still researching and I'm still
Mm.
looking, which I think flows into the family side of things as well, because it means that uh, you're contributing cognitively, you're contributing at a mental level within the family group,
Yeah,
and hopefully, having interesting discussions. And I think there is I love my acronyms, and there's one that I'm claiming it. I haven't seen anyone else claim it, and I use this with everyone, but it's aimed in the classroom, and it's FAIR.
yeah,
So FAIR, FAIR. So fun, aspiration, inspiration, and respect. So fun and respect act as bookends. So
they do.
and then aspiration and inspiration, whether it's a parent or a child or a teacher and a student or whatever, that aspiration and inspiration can actually blur a little bit because you can get a little bit from both sides. The teacher can provide both inspiration and aspiration or get
Mm.
aspiration. So I purposely leave that one a little bit grey, but the two work closely together. Um, you've got to have aspiration. I believe people should have aspiration to do something. They want to get inspiration from somewhere or someone, as long as that's, as I said, bookended by fun and respect. And so FAIR is an acronym that I throw out there, no matter what I'm doing, whether it's teaching or just living or traveling or what have you.
It is actually a pretty good acronym, that one.
Yeah, well, I've actually I've road tested it with everyone from mum through to all sorts of people, and the simplicity of it, it just seems to work. And it's sort of work-life balance, or just work, or just life, or education, or whatever. Anyway, so that's and I'm glad I remembered to tell you that one, because it really, it kind of sums me up in a way.
It does. It does. Actually, yeah. You're fun. You're sitting here having a laugh as you're telling stories, and you're being respectful at the same time of everyone you're doing. So, no, it is. It's a very good. It is actually a good acronym.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so work-life balance. How do you achieve it? How do you manage to fit work and your family together?
Yeah, you've got to accept the blend. So that's that business of do what you love what you do.
Yeah.
And if that's not happening for you, then you've got to kind of, I think, if you can, change direction a little bit, or be stronger about the work-life balance. So if it's something where you really have to go, I'm physically drawing a line in the sand here between my work-life balance and as soon as I put my foot out the work door, that's it.
Yeah.
Unless you're working on top secret stuff where you're not allowed to take it home, then probably shouldn't. But yeah, that business of do what do what you love what you do. That's kind of I think my secret to success. Where when I fly my plane around, I take photographs of the local schools. They can get a Google image, but they get a beautiful big digital image from me, and to me that's just good karma. I like taking the photographs. I share that with the principals of the schools. I'm flying there anyway. There's my balance, and it's a win-win, win-win for everyone, I think, because it's yeah.
And that's combining your storytelling with technology, with a hobby. So you've got flying, you've got photography, you've got storytelling with the Adobe, and using technology, your Adobe suites, or your complete Adobe suite, whatever Adobe program you may be using, which actually is, as you say, is fantastic.
Yeah, well, I'm lucky enough to be, well, I think one of 27 in Australasia, Adobe Creative Educator innovators. So there's a lot more Adobe Creative Educators, but in that education innovation state in Australasia, there are only 27 of us. Considering how many people use the products, that's quite cool. And you've just reminded me of another story. Tipperary Station, which is south of Darwin, and it has a school on the actual farm, and it has an airstrip. And there used to be a zoo actually there.
Rhinos and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that's right. And the story goes that one of the pygmy hippopotamuses escaped, and someone shot it. Accidentally, thinking it was a pig or a wild animal or something. But now one year, probably 2016 or 17, we have this robot, and it stands 58 centimeters tall, and it walks and it talks and it does all. It's very impressive, and the kids absolutely love it. Well, I strapped it in the back seat of the plane and flew down to Tipperary, and for the kids. Here I am, I pull in my ultralight, literally right out the front of the school. The kids were waiting there at a safe distance away from the aeroplane. I get out of the aeroplane. I get the robot out of the back seat. We go into the classroom, and I also had a little drone with me and another robotic tool. We had the best session out learning how to fly drones. The robot's talking. They're talking to the robot. I put the robot back in the plane. We finish up, and I fly back to Darwin. So these kids were in primary school, and I did think, if I was those kids out in the middle of the bush and some bloke turned up on a plane with a robot in the back seat and had walked and it talked and did whatever, and this is 8 years ago, I reckon they'll probably remember that.
It's a pretty cool way of an educator turning up, not in a car and pulling the robot out, actually turning up in an ultralight,
Yep.
landing, and that's brilliant. That's absolutely
So,
brilliant.
well, the current Chief Minister of the Northern Territory thought that was a pretty good story when she heard it.
Oh, there you go. It's have you actually ever had any problems with birds in the ultralight? Just quietly.
Birds?
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure Lance would have told you we managed to scare both him and a whole lot of birds. We were flying over a bushfire line, and this is back in the day where I didn't have that much experience, where there was a whole lot of kites, those hawks, and they're flying along, looking down, because there are all these animals that are running away from the fire, and they just think, great, there's a meal down there, and they're not looking up expecting an even bigger hawk, me in the ultralight, flying along. And in this particular case, I had Lance in the back seat, and we discovered what happens when birds get incredibly close and they think they're going to be attacked. They basically curl up into a ball and drop out of the sky. It happened probably about, 5 feet in front of me. It was very, very close, and it could have been worse. But I've almost been hit by a kangaroo on takeoff. Managed to just lift the wheels up as this silly kangaroo ran out underneath the wheels, and had some interesting events happen in the ultralight. We've had some forced landings and so forth. I've not run out of fuel, but I've had fuel blockages, which has stopped the engine from running while I've been in the air, and I've had to make a forced landing.
And then clean the fuel lines.
Yeah, well, the filter, and also bad fuel. I flew down to Kidman Springs, and I was flying back from there, and I picked up some bad fuel down there. But that's where the training kicks in. So that's where, yes, use your freedom, but make sure you've got your training in place so that when the emergency happens, you actually just kick in with the automatic process, and deal with it. I remember the second time it happened, my first thought was, not again. But anyway, I managed to get the plane into the little paddock, and I missed the trees and the horses and the ants' nests and so forth. And this old guy came out from the block next door, and he said, "Oh, I didn't think you were going to make it." And I looked at him and I said, "Neither did I." Anyway, I did, and the plane's still going. So,
there you go, Mark. Thanks for taking the time to chat to me. It's been good fun.
Same here.
Have you got any wise parting words for the viewers? Anyone watching?
Well, I've mentioned them earlier. Live your best life.
Fair.
Yeah.
Fair.
And I should add something for ly on the end, but live your best life fairly, or something like that.
Wow. Everyone watching, thank you for taking the time. If you like what you've seen, like and subscribe. If you've enjoyed the interview from Old Eggs, it's until next time. I'll catch you later. See you later.
See you later, mate.